Hi everyone and welcome to our latest episode of Future Work World podcast. My name is Barry Winkless. I'm Chief Strategy Officer of Cpl Group and Head of the Future Work Institute.
And I'm Elysia Hegarty, Associate Director at the Future Work Institute.
Now throughout the show we will discuss a range of topics relating to this thing called work.
And interview experts to inspire you to make changes to better improve work and life.
Now, Elysia, let's get straight into the first segment of our show, which is discussing a trend that's important to the future of work. What have we got today?
So today we're talking all about early careers, and in recent years the landscape of early careers has undergone a significant transformation driven by technological advances, evolving workplace expectations and the shift in educational paradigms. So one particular trend at the moment is the increasing demand for digital and technical skills across all sectors. Proficiencies in coding, data analysis and digital marketing has become essential as companies prioritise tech-savvy employees who can navigate and leverage new technologies. Google is renowned for innovative work culture, providing opportunities for skill development through programs like Google Career Certificates. They also offer flexibility and hybrid working models to enable employees to spend time working on these things as well. Another significant trend on this topic is the emphasis on lifelong learning and continuous skill development. So again, with the rapid pace of technological change, early career professionals are increasingly engaging in online courses as well, certifications, training programs to stay competitive and to adapt to new industry demands. So there's platforms like Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, Udacity have all become really popular resources in ongoing education. And when I was doing this research, it kind of reminded me as well of back in the day in another role where I worked before the Future of Work. We were struggling to attract, this was a financial services organisation, we were struggling to attract people into the organisation and really grow and diversify our talent pool. So one of the things that we did as part of this was, and early careers, was created this school leaver apprenticeship programme where we went out to underprivileged schools, to students who were doing their leaving certificates, who may not necessarily have the means to go to university or go to college. And we offered them a 2-year placement. And as part of those placements, we also offered to pay for their education as well. So that did a number of things for them. Obviously, it gave them a step in the door. It gave them a stepping stone in terms of their education. But then for the organisation, it also enabled us to broaden our talent pool as well. So I think those early career trends and approaches are really important part of any talent strategy for organisations.
Yeah, I wonder, I always think about the skills thing. When I look around today, all the tools are available to us, right? So for me, a lot of it comes back to that mindset. How do we create a culture of learning, from school onwards, that it doesn't feel like a bit of a chore? It's really funny. I coach a kids team, and they'll spend hours and hours creating their own YouTube video. But then, they feel put under pressure when they have to do a particular topic or whatever in school. So I think it's, how do we get them to understand that learning is not a chore and work on things that they're interested in, and then through that process, become more skilled. Because, I think we all know that we all have to become a little bit more technologically skilled. The tools are out there. It's just the mindset of getting through that barrier of, well, you know what, we all need a bit of technological language and skills now. So how do we do something, to upskill that? So, I always have that thing. Is it up to the organisation to make sure people are kept up to speed with their skills, or is it up to the individual, And
it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a combo. I think the organisation might need to push a little bit, but maybe find the areas that those people are interested in. So I'm always interested in the skills discussion,
Yeah, and having opportunities where there are platforms where people can go and enhance certain skills, that may not necessarily be as relevant to their role, but can be a transferable skill for their role. Which is I might not need necessarily to do anything technological in my role, but having a good understanding of that and maybe being able to code something might help me with problem solving. So all of those things can be really important for any role, I think.
Yeah, really interesting. So that leads us on nicely to our interview section, Elysia. Today we're going to be speaking to Mark Wood, Social Sustainability Lead at Siemens for Great Britain and Ireland. Mark has worked in the STEM arena for over 20 years, creating project content in consultative and strategic roles and managing UK government contracts, linking schools and businesses around the skills agenda. He's an active STEM ambassador and sits on strategic boards for OCR, the Manchester Tech Forum, the Inclusion Collective, and Engineering UK's Business and Industry Panel. Mark chairs the Manufacturing Technologies Association's Education and Development Committee and is also a board member of the NW3 Maths Hubs in the northwest of England, where he is from. So looking forward to this one, Elysia. Mark, I might come to you first. Interested in what social sustainability actually is as it relates to Siemens.
Yeah, it's a good question. Social sustainability, it's a new topic. It's a new title that's coming through. If the easiest way to think about it is if you think of sustainability as people, place, planet, and it's the people and the place is the social. So from Siemens's perspective, we look at social sustainability as anything like future skills. So future skills coming from school environments up into our early career professionals and beyond, as well as upskilling, reskilling. We include that in our volunteering and our charitable giving, so any of the work we're doing in the community spaces, advocacy work, so skills talks, white papers, things along those lines, as well as then the kind of the human legislation piece. So from a sustainability angle, where are we taking our products from a raw product? What's the human rights there? What's the human rights within our supply chain, our procurement? Across the board, very much involved in that diversity, equity, and inclusion space as well. So it's quite a broad topic, but it's anything people or place based.
Yeah, gotcha. And it's interesting, Mark, in terms of, you've obviously been spending a bit of time now on this topic, right? And you're obviously trying to position Siemens as that leader in this space. Are you proud of where you've gotten to so far in terms of the work you've done? And, where are you thinking about trying to bring it?
Yes, we're really proud of where we've got to so far. It is a new space. It's a developing space. The legislation around this is changing rapidly from the European Union legislation, but also from anywhere where we're doing business. And we're looking at this as a global approach now as well. We've got projects going on from our global offices looking at this. And we're really proud because Great Britain and Ireland we're ahead of the game on this. We are really advanced in what we want to do, but that's not to say when we're resting on our laurels. From a diversity inclusion perspective, there's so much more work to do. We want to be creative. We want to have the skills and the thought processes of lots of different types of people coming through, and whether they're neurodiverse students or students from lower social economic backgrounds, different ethnicities, different genders, they really make that mixing pot of Siemens, which means we're going to have that creativity of thought, which means hopefully we'll still be here in the future. So there's still work to do on that space for sure. The challenges across scope 2, scope 3 into our supply chain is enormous. Our supply chain is also enormous, over 12,000 companies in Great Britain and Ireland. So it's a big challenge for us, but it's something we really want to work with our supply chain as well, because we're only as strong as that ecosystem together. If we sort ourselves out, but we don't consider the supply chain, our reputation, our business, our future, where our future skills are coming from, we're not doing a successful job of it. So it needs to be, it's an ongoing journey.
Yeah. Mark, just one more question. What's the initiative, let's say, that you've implemented or in the process of implementing that you're most proud of in terms of its either impact or its potential future impact?
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Put you on the spot. Putting you on the spot, Mark. You look too comfortable with those answers, so I've just...
I think it's probably our virtual work experience program. So work experience is obviously, it's a big topic. It's how we need to inspire our next generation of employees, whether they're early career staff or just people coming through into the business. But it's challenging with the world of work in which we are now, hybrid working. We're not based in offices as such anymore. It's a challenge. But if I'm being honest, we started the virtual work experience because of COVID. But since then, it's become a really, really strong diversity and inclusion piece for us. we're engaging with 5,000 to 6,000 students a year, which we could never do face to face. But interestingly, the work we're doing through an organization called SpringPod means that our diversity figures are fantastic. We're on about 49% females taking part in our virtual work experience. We're about 76% ethnic minorities taking part, which is absolutely fantastic. We've also got some really interesting statistics around neurodiverse students taking part in our program, home carers taking part in our program, people that are engaging with free school meals in the UK. So real different people taking part and learning a little bit more about Siemens, but then as a collective, a lot more about STEM roles as a whole, the science, technology, engineering and maths, because again, it's an ecosystem. We can't just sort ourselves out. We've got to sort the entire sector out, and together we're stronger. So our approach to all of this is that collaboration.
Fantastic.
So, Mark, how early should the concept of early careers start?
I think as early as possible. Preconceptions within younger people are still rife, and especially when we are talking about careers in science, technology, engineering, and maths. There's huge amounts of research to say our education system doesn't align with where those skill sets are going to come from. So, for example, the number of young ladies that turn themselves away from maths and physics roles and computer science roles in that transition from a primary school to a secondary school is really, really high, from various reasons, by going into graded sets and also by being subject matter based rather than thematic based training. So the earlier we can get in to young people's minds, to their parents, their influencers, their carers, the earlier we can stop those preconceptions happening. And that isn't just a gender issue. That's also a social mobility issue. I work in schools a lot, and I hear quite a lot of comments such along the lines of that role wouldn't be for me. I can't do that role, which we know from a business perspective is utter rubbish. We really need those different skill sets, but the earlier we can get into those mindsets and stop those preconceptions happening, the better.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. I have a funny side story, actually, if it's okay to share. So I'm expecting at the moment, we're expecting a little girl, and my father-in-law is... Thank you. My father-in-law is a physicist, was a physicist, and there's a big... There's a big joke in the family now that they're buying like quantum physics baby books to try and influence her.
I was going to say, could I get that book so I can understand quantum physics? Yeah.
Should it be that early? Should we be training our kids from birth and influencing them that early?
But it's interesting. We've got lots of topics that, environmental topics. The next generation are really, really keen on environmental topics. So there's an abundance of STEM and technical roles within the environment that we can really utilize. And if people have got that passion to, save the planet in which we're living and look at the environment and look at being more sustainable as a person, then actually, if we can take that passion and bring it into a world of work, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's where the future lies.
It's really interesting, actually, because so it's a good example that you bring, because I remember speaking to somebody who's a professor in a particular branch of science, and he said, "Look, Barry, you love music." I said, "Science is a bit like that, right? There's loads of different instruments. There's loads of different scientific disciplines, and you mightn't like one, but you'll find interest in another. And I think that's sometimes where the conversation can begin and end. It's seen as science and technology." And, it stops with that moment where you go, "I'm not sure I really like physics that much," but then you realize there's this whole world of other stuff, It's like, I remember my first instrument was the violin, and genuinely it looked as though I was killing cats, and then I switched to the guitar and everything made sense, right? So I think it's a bit like that. I think sometimes it can be a scary topic, for kids, but actually there's a lot there, right?
Absolutely. And that, I was the same. I sat on the oboe, and I made people's ears bleed. I was awful at it. It wasn't a good time for my musical career. But there's been some really interesting comparisons of music and computer science, coding. In essence, it's a language. It's like learning French. You learn coding, you learn to read music. So we need to really open up that STEM science, engineering, technology world to get those creative minds in, because that's where we'll make the differences in the future. We need people that can follow instructions, but we need people that will also just think, let's do it differently. And that's where we really want to open up our recruitment streams, our engagement work with younger people, our engagement work with different communities. It's so important if we want to be future-proofing our businesses.
I suppose that leads to the next question, and I know it's a loaded question, Mark. From your perspective, you're out there engaging a lot with schools. Are schools doing enough? Is the curriculum right? Is it set up for what society needs to become? And I know this is a big question, but I'm interested in your own view. Not necessarily as an employer view, just as a human being view. Are schools doing what they need to do to create this whole person? Are we moved away from that? Where do you think we are in the schools system and in that conversation?
Speaking as Mark, not as Siemens, I think we've got a lot to learn from primary schools, because the primary school model is taking a theme, a project, a topic, and then adding in the subject knowledge from those themes. So, we might teach Egyptians, and you look at the English side of it, you look at the maths, you look at the architecture, the history, and then suddenly we go into this kind of secondary tier of education, and we become very obsessed with subjects. And subjects, because the pressures on all schools and all teaching systems are so high, they don't necessarily have time to talk to each other. So it becomes very theoretical. It becomes very focused. That's not the world of work. There are no rules. There are no jobs that just have one subject as part of their remit. It's a massive mix of everything. And that's actually growing as technology grows. Our engineers now have to be technologists. If they can't use elements of technology, then that's not where the future of engineering is. So it really is. I think it's more skills based that industry need, and I think that skill comes from a range of skills, with obviously that underlined by the subject knowledge, but the subject knowledge isn't as concreted anymore. And I think our education systems would really benefit from a shift towards more skills-based teaching rather than subject-based teaching, because that's what the world of work is, right? That's where we need to. You have a project that takes into account everything: finance, maths, English, written subjects, bits, the science behind it, the engineering behind it. It's not one role. So I think we should be looking back to our primary and seeing where we can develop from there to have that skills-based approach.
Yeah, and I think there's I've seen a few anyway here in Ireland. There's like coding camps and that for kids now as well. So the outside of the primary school curriculum, trying to kind of encourage kids to embrace technology and understand, and even hackathons and that for kids as well. So that it is starting at a very young age, whether it's in line with the curriculum or not. Yeah.
I really like the idea. We've been looking at this as well, Mark, through the Future Work Institute, and this idea of challenges and quests. You don't go and say, I'm going to learn X. It's more if you're going to try to overcome a challenge, and you might use multiple skills to overcome that challenge. And I always come back to the music analogy because I'm obsessed with music. But think about the amount of skills even you learn through learning a guitar or the oboe, and people often forget, like there's problem solving in learning an instrument. There's, focus, there's a lot of concentration, there's a lot of practice, and that idea of constantly finding your voice and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think we need to move away from that very narrow definition of subjects, because then we were in a crazy situation, I think, where we're now seeing universities trying to drive greater interdisciplinary research, and you're kind of going, it kind of feels like the wrong way around to me a little bit, So yeah, I think that it becomes so important to me that
yeah,
I agree, and I think it's that literacy piece, isn't it? I mean, and I don't just mean grammar understanding literacy; it's digital literacy, it's sustainability as a literacy topic, it's computers as literacy, it's all of those. The coding for primary school is the perfect time to do it because it's learning a new language. Now, you might not have a job in coding, but you might have a job where it's a software engineer that needs to understand the language of coding to solve the problem. And it's the problem solving that I think is quite often missing from education, because it becomes just theoretical knowledge. And we all need problem solvers in our worlds. And we're looking at a number of different things. We've got some great success stories where we've taken a particular lady on as an engineer without any engineering background at all, and she's absolutely soaring because she's got the right mindset. And that's really important, because we're diversifying our workforce, but we're also diversifying all the creative ways we can solve problems, which is what we are as an engineering technology company. We're problem solvers.
So what are some of the meaningful initiatives and collaborations that you've been involved in to kind of fill the skills and career gap?
There's some great collaborations out there. There's some really, really good work going on. The work we do with Global Bridge is really interesting, because it's really embedding that digital foresight, that digital approach from a very early age. So we no longer take CVs at Siemens. We've decided against taking CVs from an equity angle, really. If parents are professionals, then they're going to be able to support their child writing a better CV than someone that might be third, fourth generation benefits, but that shouldn't affect the ability of that individual. So we've seen a much more diversity come through from that, and quite digitally literate candidates, which is fabulous, because like the Global Bridge approach, when we're looking at virtual webinars, virtual platforms, virtual ways to demonstrate the skill sets that these individuals have, it's much more in line with what we're doing as a business. And that's across the board as all businesses. Paper is not particularly a thing that we encourage. It's not great for the environment, but also it's tatty, it can get lost, it's not secure, it's not stable. Digital is much easier in that respect. So I think some of those initiatives are fantastic. We're also working with some organizations to support coding skills, but in a competitive format. But those schools that really need that equity piece, rather than the schools that can already afford it, perhaps. It's not to say we're not working with those schools. We might provide mentors to some of those schools, but if we're going to pay for some kit, for example, and pay for some training for the teachers, we need to be working with the schools that don't have those opportunities already. And that equity piece, to just give everyone the level playing field that everyone deserves, is a really strong piece. So we're doing some of the work with that with the First Lego League. We've got some great work going on with a careers roadshow that we do called See Me, and that's focused very much on gender. And it's not, we have to have 100% females. What we do is we focus the content and the deliverers on our female. So the audience are mixed. The audience are from a mixed student group, but the camera person is a lady. The presenter is a lady. The technician is a lady. And therefore that subconscious message about, preconceptions can all just be ripped apart. We've also got a really fantastic project working with roller coasters with some special educational needs and disability students, which is unbelievably rewarding and unbelievably amazing for the things that they come out with and create. It's really fantastic. So there's some great work going on out there with all sorts of different bodies.
Amazing. I have one last question, if that's okay, if we have time. I'm just curious, just for people who are listening, or any organisations that might be listening here today and maybe considering implementing early careers, programs in their organisation, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for them?
Top 3 reasons. That's a really interesting one. I would look at engaging with younger students. Don't just focus on those kind of career decision makers around 15, 16 plus. By the time we get to that age, a lot of students have already discounted some of the opportunities. So go younger, work with some of those opportunities. Focus on the schools or the bodies, the community groups that you think need the help. Work with everybody, but let's try and level this up a little bit. So we're not all fishing from the same pool of talent. We need to make sure that pool of talent increases. And I would say, keep it simple. One thing I think a lot of companies do is go into their business talk and run into, sustainability is a great example of this. We talk about sustainability, and actually schools that are talking about sustainability, thinking of it from a very environmental, green geography approach. Some of the people that are coming into our business now, are quite shocked that a lot of our sustainability is reporting, data mining, computer science, we need to just be honest with the next generation and future people coming into our businesses. Be honest with them, tell them the kind of roles we're expecting, and hopefully we'll find the right people.
Great. Mark, thank you from myself and Elysia. Mark Wood, Social Sustainability Lead at Siemens for Great Britain and Ireland. Mark, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Love to speak to you both.
So this is the part of the show where we share an artifact of the future. This might be a concept or a physical item that may exist over time in the future. So Barry, what have we got today?
Nice one for you today, Elysia. Immersive induction. Utilising the latest in immersive, augmented and virtual realities and approaches and a natural evolution of organisations making their missions, cultures and activities more accessible to potential candidates. Immersive induction enables any potential candidates from schoolgoers to experienced professionals to gain a real-world view on the realities of working with their targeted and preferred places to work across various mediums of engagement. For example, at Energy Pulse, one of the largest sustainable energy companies in 2035, potential candidates can go on a VR maintenance call with an Energy Pulse employee and get a sense of a day in the life of that maintenance technician. At one of the largest architectural firms in Singapore, they've created an architectural playground platform that enables third and fourth year university students to input into live architectural projects and even in a small way experience the real world of the practicing architect. One of the surprising outcomes of immersive induction is that some employees have become minor social celebrities. Fabian Dare, for example, a middle-aged technician, has become a bit of a hit due to his laconic and often real perspectives on working in the aforementioned Energy Pulse, resulting in a 200% increase in job applications. So immersive induction, you heard it here first, and think about how that might make a difference in your own organisation.
Amazing. Thank you. So thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed the show, please hit subscribe and head over to your favourite podcasting platform to listen to more.
And please continue the conversation at futureworkworld.com, where you can get all the latest insights, practices and interviews about this world of work. Thank you.
Thank you.